Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining us today. Once again, we will be discussing about devotee care today. And before that, we'll start with a small kirtan and then we will go into the class. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Gopinath, Gopinath Shri Radhe, Jaya Radha Gopinath, Gopinath Shri Radhe, Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadramai, Jaya Sudarshana, Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadramai, Jaya Sudarshana, Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtottara Satasimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtottara Satasimad Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. नामाचार्य हरिदास ठाकुर की जय. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. श्री श्री राधा गोपीनाथ की जय. देयर लॉर्डशिप जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा माई की जय. पतित पावन पंच तत्व की जय. जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय. राजापुर धाम की जय. समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय. गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते जय पताका स्वामी निति नामिने नमाचार्य पादाय निताय कृपा प्रदायिने गौर कथा दामदाय नगर ग्राम तारिणे नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंगायते गिरिं यत्कृपा तमहं वंदे श्री गुरुं दिनतारणं परमानंद माधवम श्री चैतन्य ईश्वरम हरि ओम तत्सत. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you so much for joining us today in the series of the devotee care that is an initiative of ISKCON Sydney. We are focusing on certain topics on what should be the relationship between the mentor and the mentee. And in those topics, I would like to focus on certain aspects of what are the characteristics or the qualities of the devotees, how should we imbibe that. And last time when I took the class, it was primarily focusing on what should be the responsibility of the mentee, and how the mentee should basically take the criticism, and how should be the relationship between the mentee and the mentor. So on the same lines, I would like to concentrate on one of the biggest qualities that we need to have in any kind of a relationship, basically in a spiritual relationship. So today I'm going to concentrate on that aspect. So when we look at Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he actually gave only 8 slokas, right? We all know that. Mahaprabhu gave only 8 slokas as the instructions. He left everything else to be done by his disciples, right? All the books have been written by his disciples, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Raghunatha Das Goswami, like that, all the principal 6 Goswamis, they actually started writing, and then after that, it was continued by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and then we also have Bhaktivinoda Thakur writing so many literatures based on Mahaprabhu's teachings. But those 8 verses composed by Mahaprabhu is very, 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 very important. It contains pretty much everything that is contained in all the Vedic literatures. What is the interaction between the Lord and the devotee, right? So he basically teaches how to develop a taste for the holy name, right? And the first quality that he actually talks about is basically humility, right? But before actually talking about, the interesting fact is that before talking about the humility and the tolerance, in the second verse, he talks about how we don't have the taste for the holy name, right? He says that, Durdaivam idrisham ihajani anuragaha. Anuraga means to basically have a spiritual taste, right? And the opposite is basically nanuragaha, no taste or no attraction, right? So, but then the thing is that most of the time what is happening here is that even though we know all the glories of the holy name, I have no attraction to it, right? So that is why Mahaprabhu is actually starting with an antidote in the 3rd verse. What is the antidote? So that way one can actually develop the taste for holy name is basically Trinadapi Sunichena, Tarorapi Sahishnuna, Amanina Manadena, Kirtaniya Sadaharihi. So this is the antidote. First thing, Mahaprabhu says that in the mood of humility, right? The mood of the humility, right, is basically the way in which we will be able to develop that attraction towards the holy name. Now, we may be actually, let's say, for example, here Mahaprabhu is giving the example of a grass, how humble we need to be, similar like a grass and more tolerant than a tree, right? So the acharyas actually say that this shloka has to be around our neck. Only then, we will be able to remember it, and then we will be able to chant nicely, right? So it has to be etched in our memory, right? So why, if you think about it, it is such a very simple thing. Let's say, for example, that we are all going to a park, and then we are just sitting in the park, and then we have a group of people sitting there, and then let's say we are sitting there for a lunch or something in the Hyde Park. What you might observe is that when we are talking, knowingly or unknowingly, we start plucking the grass from the ground where we are sitting. Now, the grass is never protesting, right? It never says, don't pluck me, don't throw me, right? People generally are in a disturbed state That is why they need some kind of a activity to keep on engaging them. And that's why they go plucking the grass and then they throw it, they pluck the leaves and then they throw it and all those things, right? Under any situation, in the same way, Mahaprabhu says that is why it is very, very important that we remain humble and tolerant in all kind of situations. Right? So, in order to establish the characteristics of humility and tolerance, Mahaprabhu actually uses several devotees in order to establish the characteristics of how to be humble and how to be tolerant. Right? So the first one, it is said that Mahaprabhu, he used Haridas Thakur to teach the principle of forbearance or tolerance. And then he used Sanatana Goswami to teach the principle of humility and meekness. Right? And then he used Damodar Pandit to demonstrate the context of how to take criticism, and Ramananda Raya to teach about the complete detachment. Right? And when we read Chaitanya Charitamrita, we already know, we have heard it from so many classes, and we already know about Haridas Thakur. We know how he was actually beaten in 22 marketplaces by very, very strong people. Right? These strong people were basically ordered to kill Haridas Thakur. And the rule was that is, if they did not succeed in killing Haridas Thakur, they themselves would be killed. This is the circumstance under which these strong sentries, they were basically given the order to beat Haridas Thakur in 22 marketplaces. Right? So the point is that when Haridas Thakur, so he was being beaten by these sentries, they really had the intention to kill Haridas Thakur. The sentries had really the intention to kill Haridas Thakur. And when Haridas Thakur was being beaten in these marketplaces, Mahaprabhu got to know about it, and he could not tolerate it. He immediately sent the Sudarshan Chakra to destroy these sentries. But to the surprise of everyone, Sudarshan Chakra could not act. We may wonder why. Sudarshan Chakra never, once it has been released from the hands of Krishna, always it will be doing its activity and then it will actually come back. Sudarshan Chakra's duty is to execute the order of Krishna and then come back. But in this situation, Sudarshan Chakra could not execute the activity. Why? Because Haridas Thakur was basically praying for the welfare and the protection of the sentries who were beating him. So he was praying, Haridas Thakur was basically praying that these sentries are just, carrying out the orders of the king. So please don't give any reaction to them. They are unknowingly being put into this kind of a situation, and as a result, they are actually acting in this. So that is why Sudarshan Chakra could not do it. So then immediately Sudarshan Chakra was actually returning back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu without completing his job. So then Mahaprabhu got very anxious. So what to do now? Right? Because Sudarshan Chakra is not able to kill them, because the prayers of Haridas Thakur is protecting the people. Because Haridas Thakur is not just any devotee, he is such a great devotee. So immediately what happens is then Mahaprabhu feels such anxiety. So immediately he goes and then he covers the back of Haridas Thakur and gets the beating to protect Haridas Thakur. right? So what is happening here is that is we can actually, learn couple of things from this story of Haridas Thakur, that in spite of getting the beating, Haridas Thakur basically is praying for the people who are actually beating him. Now, in many situations, right, it might happen that, the mentor and the mentee, when they are basically, I'm not saying physically beating them, but there might have been certain situations where we might be getting certain instructions which is very hard to follow. And sometimes it may also be the situation where we give the instruction to the mentee and the mentee is not following those instructions. So as a result, what happens? That, we will not be able to tolerate it. Immediately our thought process will be that, oh, why is I gave him this instruction, but then he is not actually following it. What can I do? I am a mentor. I can only give the instruction. But the next time when the mentee comes in, then we will be the immediate reaction will be that, oh, I gave you the instruction last time, but you were not in the mood to take it. You did not do it, right? And immediately we will try to find some kind of a fault, or we will place some criticism in that kind of a situation. Sometimes it could be the other way as well. The mentee probably will give certain kind of a criticism behind our back, probably. But that is also a characteristic which is not desirable. But let's say, for example, a junior devotee, right? Probably a new person who doesn't understand about the exchanges between the devotees. So obviously certain criticisms might come for the mentor. So in both these cases, the mentor needs to have certain type of a tolerance. Without developing the tolerance, it is very, very difficult to actually establish that relationship between the mentor and the mentee. That is why when you look at Bhagavad Gita also, the very first thing that Krishna actually tells or gives the instruction to Arjuna is Titikshasva Bharata. So what does that mean? Titikshasva. He has to tolerate the dualities of the life. Praises may come, criticisms may come, good may come, bad may come, wrong may come, right may come, everything. This is a world. This is bound to happen. In this world of duality, it is bound to happen. This material world is actually designed for that way. Designed for basically this duality. If we do not learn to tolerate that duality of criticism or praise, we will not be able to practice Krishna consciousness. The material nature will constantly come and disturb us and test us based on this duality. But we need to be steadfast in following the principle of forbearance and tolerance in order to get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When we are helping somebody else, we are actually getting the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because we are actually helping them to actually grow in their Krishna consciousness. And as a result, the interaction is very, very important, and we need the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in a Vaishnava relationship, many times we will see that there is no room for right or wrong. Generally, we cannot argue that, you are right, I am wrong, and vice versa. It's very difficult for us to actually come to that, because right and wrong are based on materialistic tendencies. right? But what we are trying to understand here is that is how to do it on a Krishna conscious basis. When we try to do everything on a Krishna conscious platform, there is no right or there is nothing as wrong. Everything is correct because it is based on the principle of Krishna consciousness. And as a result, all the more the reason that we need the cooperation of the Vaishnavas at all the time. Right? The association of the Vaishnavas is very, very important. From a mentee perspective, we need to actually look up to a senior devotee. We need that association so that way we can actually gain the experiences from the senior devotee. And there may be instances where we might get certain instructions which are not so palatable, but we need to actually try to follow that. We need to develop that tolerance. Sometimes it might be that, as a senior devotee, irrespective of, we may have come across certain situations where the devotee is very busy, but then, because they are being busy in their activities or in their services, they might not be able to stop for a while and then, acknowledge us. But immediately what happens? Our mind goes ahead and it thinks that, oh, this Prabhu, he is not actually, I am coming here, but then he is not actually looking at me and he is not even saying Hare Krishna. Right? And so, the next time what happens? This keeps on going on in the mind. So, when the next time comes, when the next instruction comes from the mentor, then we don't even understand because automatically we tend to not execute the instruction. So we need to really understand, right? Chanakya Pandit actually says, what you respect will always stay in your life. If we respect money, money will stay in your life. If you respect people, people will stay in your life. If you respect Vaishnavas, Vaishnavas will stay in our life. And how to hold the Vaishnavas in our life? The answer is very, very simple. We have to be as humble as possible. That is where the teachings of Mahaprabhu in the third verse of Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadaharihi comes. There are so many things that we will be able to repay to a Vaishnava. But there is one thing in our life that we will not be able to repay under any circumstance. The time when we leave this body, we have to depend on a Vaishnava to put the tilaka on our body, to bathe our body, and then send us back home. This is a debt that we will never be able to repay. That is the gratitude that we need to have towards the Vaishnavas. Vaishnavas are the most merciful. This is the attitude that we need to have, irrespective of whether it is a mentee or a mentor. That we should respect each other. We should always be humble towards each other. We should be always tolerant towards each other. There is a very nice example in the life of Rupa Goswami. Couple of examples in the life of Rupa Goswami. So, one time, what happens is that this Jiva Goswami, he is very young, and obviously because of his relationship with Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, he was very close with Rupa Goswami. So, one time, what happens is that is Vallabhacharya, who is a close friend of Rupa Goswami, he comes to Rupa Goswami and he says, Vallabhacharya says, he says to Rupa Goswami, I hear that you wrote a new book. So I would like to actually read that book. Can you please give it to me? I would like to read it I would be very much interested. I like all your books. Can you please give it to me? I will read it and give it back to you. So Rupa Goswami, he is also very happy. He says like, okay, no problem, I will give it to you. And then Rupa Goswami, Vallabhacharya, after reading the book, he comes back to Rupa Goswami and he says, there are few grammatical errors in this book, and so can you please correct them? So Rupa Goswami humbly, he says that, I will correct it, no problem, thank you so much. Right? And Jiva Goswami, he comes to know about this, that Vallabhacharya has gone and then he has actually criticized about the book that is written by Rupa Goswami. So immediately Jiva Goswami goes to Vallabhacharya and he blasts him left and right. He is saying like, who do you think you are? Who are you to correct Rupa Goswami? Do you know who Rupa Goswami is? He is Rupa Manjari. He is such a great devotee and he is such a great disciple of Mahaprabhu. Who are you to criticize him? Like that he goes and he blasts Vallabhacharya. And hearing this, Vallabhacharya felt very bad that he had actually committed a great offense. So this is one instance. And the second instance is that there is a Digvijay Pandit, a very learned scholar. He actually comes to Rupa Goswami. So he comes to Rupa Goswami and he says that I want to actually have a debate with you. Because everybody around here in Vrindavan, they say that you are a powerful Pandit in this area. So I want to actually have a debate with you. Can you come for a debate with me? But Rupa Goswami, being humble, he said that he was not a scholar and he is just doing some services as his spiritual master has asked him to do. So Rupa Goswami says like, I'm sorry, I'm not such a great scholar. I have to do my service. So then the Digvijay Pandit says that if that is the case, can you sign a document saying that I have defeated you? So immediately Rupa Goswami says, no problem. Show it to me and then I will sign it. And Rupa Goswami immediately signs the document saying that the Digvijay Pandit has defeated Rupa Goswami in a debate. Again, Jiva Goswami comes to know about it. Immediately he goes to the Digvijay Pandit and then he says that I want to have a debate with you. And then basically through philosophical conversations, Jiva Goswami basically defeats the Digvijay Pandit. And then after that, he came to Rupa Goswami and he said proudly, he said, I have defeated him. Based on whatever philosophy that you taught me, I have defeated this Digvijay Pandit. And Jiva Goswami thought, Rupa Goswami is actually going to be happy to hear this. And, he will be very proud that, my disciple or whatever that I have taught, that you have actually, implemented it and then you have actually defeated the Digvijay. On the other hand, Rupa Goswami became very grave and he became very serious. Right? So then Rupa Goswami told Jiva Goswami that you have lost the qualification to live in Vrindavana. So please leave Vrindavana immediately. When we externally think about it, what we will feel is what is wrong in Jiva Goswami going and protecting Rupa Goswami and establishing the philosophy. What is wrong in that? Right? So the important point what Rupa Goswami is actually trying to establish here is if we want to develop a pure devotional service, We need to be above raga, dvesha, anger and hatred, right and wrong, right? So all these things, we should be above these things. That is how we should tolerate it, right? So we should be above, sometimes somebody will come and tell us, like, when we are doing something, some kind of a service in the temple, right? Sometimes we may face an experience where somebody will suddenly come and say, like, Prabhu, why are you basically doing it this way? You should not do it this way. And then immediately we will be blamed for what is happening there. And many times we would not have even committed such a thing, and then we would be blamed for that. But Rupa Goswami, what he is teaching us here is that we should be above this kind of a right or wrong, the criticism or praise. We should be above all these things. We should be above the anger and hatred. And only then we will be able to develop pure devotional service. As aspiring devotees, we need to develop this attitude. And the biggest advantage is how we can actually come to that point is basically by having this relationship between the Vaishnavas. It is so practical that we will be able to understand how dynamic the relationship is. So these are the situations under which we will be able to understand how one can be tolerant, how one can be humble. Without the help of the Vaishnavas, it is very difficult for us to understand what is humility, what is tolerance. On our own, it is not going to be possible. And that is the role of actually the mentor, to help the mentee to understand how we need to be tolerant. By setting as an example, by being an example for the mentee, by showing by example how to be humble and how to be tolerant. This is a quality that a mentee and a mentor should have. And that is when we will be able to develop pure devotional service. There is another beautiful example in the life of Ramanujacharya, right? So, in Sri Rangam, there was an elderly Brahmana and he approached Ramanujacharya. He had a lot of respect for Ramanujacharya. And the elderly Brahmana, he wanted Ramanujacharya to accept him as a disciple. So he goes to Ramanujacharya and he says, like, can you please accept me as a disciple? So that way I can get your blessings. I want to be as a disciple. I want to serve you. Now Ramanujacharya became very uneasy, thinking this elderly Brahmana, he is like a father to me. He is of a fatherly age. Because Acharya needs to set an example. So then Acharya, being an Acharya, he says that, okay, how can I actually come out of this kind of a scenario wherein I cannot, make it more uncomfortable? Because this elderly Brahmana is actually coming and actually asking me. So another thing is if typically if we were in that kind of a situation, we might think like, oh, this elderly person, he wants to actually take this kind of a position. He wants to give me this position. And we will immediately, we will feel so proud about it. We will feel that, oh, I deserve this position. We may do one or two things. Immediately we may think that I deserve this position. And, and typically this is another thing as a mentor, right? If we have a couple of mentees with us, immediately The thought process would be that, oh, I have a couple of people under me. I have to give instructions to them. So immediately the pride goes up. The false ego kicks in. Right? So that is why Ramanujacharya here, he is actually setting us an example how we should not let our pride take over, how we should not allow the false ego to come up. So Ramanujacharya immediately, he humbly said, okay, no problem, I will take you as a disciple, but under one condition. If you allow me to wash your feet every day and in the bank of Kaveri, every day I will come to the bank of Kaveri to take my bath, and immediately after I take my bath, I have to come and wash your feet. If that is the case, then I will accept you as my disciple. So the elderly Brahmana also, he says like, okay, no problem. Then he accepts it. Ramanujacharya thought by washing the Brahmana's feet, the elderly Brahmana's feet, he can actually express that respect for him. Right? So this was actually going on for a while. Every day Ramanujacharya will come to Kaveri and then he will take his bath and then he will come to the shore. The elderly Brahmana will be waiting and then he will wash the feet of the Brahmana. Ramanujacharya will wash the feet of the Brahmana and then he will go on. So this keeps on going for a while. But in between, what happens is that as Ramanujacharya goes to Kanchipuram, and then after 2 weeks, Ramanujacharya comes back to Srirangam. And during this time, during these 2 weeks, Ramanujacharya forgets to pass on the information to the elderly Brahmana that he will be not there, he will not be there, and he is actually going to Kanchipuram and he will not be there in Srirangam. Right? And when Ramanujacharya comes back, he sees the elderly Brahmana standing at the banks of Kaveri. And Ramanujacharya gets a big shock. He becomes very sad and he immediately runs and then he goes to the elderly Brahmana and then he asks like, what are you doing here? And then the elderly Brahmana says that, I am waiting for you to come and wash my feet. And then Ramanujacharya hears this and then he says like, haven't you gone home? I've been gone for 2 weeks. Have you been standing here for 2 weeks? Then the elderly Brahmana says like, yes. How can I actually disobey the order of a spiritual master? I am your disciple. How can I actually Arya had tears in his eyes. Ramanujacharya thought that he was actually serving the Brahmana by washing his feet. Rather, here, the elderly Brahmana was doing the service to Ramanujacharya. Right? Bhakti means humble devotional service. Generally, we think in this kind of a situation when we think about it, right, that we are actually serving Krishna. Rather, Krishna is serving us in the sense that, we may do some service for 2 minutes or rather for 2 hours every day we are doing it. Maybe, for 16 rounds of chanting, we take 2 hours every day and we are doing that service. Right? But for the rest of the day, Krishna has to take care of us. And because we have chanted the holy name of the Lord, Krishna is actually taking care of us for the rest of our life. Right? Now, let us think, who is serving who? Are we serving Krishna or is Krishna serving us? That is why Krishna is saying, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. Right? I give you what you lack and I protect what you have. Krishna is actually serving us more than what we are actually serving him. Right? This is the kind of a relationship that we need to have between a mentor and a mentee. The mentor has to think that I am actually serving this person, not the other way around, where the mentee is actually serving me. Right? I am here to serve the mentee. I am here to actually help the other person to grow in Krishna consciousness. That is why we need to understand how we can be humble under this position. And at the same time, as a mentee, we should understand that, that the mentor is a well-wisher for us. The mentor is actually a well-wisher for us. He is there to help me. As a result, I need to actually take those instructions and then I need to take that help. Somebody is coming out of the way to come and help me. So as a result, I need to take that help and develop in Krishna consciousness. And by doing so, and I will be able to serve Mahaprabhu. I will be able to grow in my devotional service. That is the reason that, we have to understand how humility will basically help us. Right? So, in this, again, in this aspect where I'll tell one more story here of how humble we need to be, right? And how is the relationship or how is the interaction is between devotees, right? Typically, humility is actually thought that, it is a sign of a weakness. But rather, it is actually the courage, right? It is not a sign of weakness. We tend to develop the courage to understand where we are lacking. It actually is on a higher platform. It takes courage to say that, I am wrong. I have made a mistake. I accept my mistake. It takes a lot of courage to come to that platform. Typically what happens is that most of the time we don't tend to accept the mistake that we are actually doing. Most of the time we think that, we are correct, right? That is why we say that, that Prabhupada says that, we have come here into this material world to lord it over everything. That is our nature. But we have to get out of that nature. We have to develop that nature of not being the opposite of being humble, developing that pride, developing that false ego. That's why developing humility is very, very important. Right? So it goes to in one of the stories which I'm trying to say here is that it shows how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an embodiment of the humility. When Mahaprabhu, after taking sannyasa, and he comes to Puri, right? And in Puri, after coming to Puri and taking darshana and then basically meeting Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and then he defeats Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in the Mayavada philosophy. And then after that, Mahaprabhu immediately starts to go on a South India tour. And on the way, he goes to Kurma Kshetra. And in that place, there is a Brahmana who had leprosy. This Brahmana, somehow or other, he came to know that, Lord Chaitanya has actually come to Kurmakshetra. And he wanted to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Right? So when somebody has a leprosy, it is very disgusting. Right? Worms will be coming out of their fingers, and pus will be coming out of that, and so like that, and so and they will not be able to do much activity. But then this Brahmana, he was crawling and he was struggling to go and see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the worms were actually falling out of his body. And the Brahmana, what he will do is he will take the worm again and then he will put it on his wound. He would take them and then he will put it on his wound. He was thinking that, the Brahmana was thinking, my body is useless for me. At least let it be useful for the worm. And by the time he reaches the place where Mahaprabhu was staying, Mahaprabhu already would have left that place. Knowing this, he feels very sad. He was thinking that, I'm unable to see this, I'm unable to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so I am going to commit a suicide. And immediately Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes to know about it, and he comes back and then he gives darshan to this Brahmana. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came back, he came and he embraced the Brahmana. The Brahmana was basically cringing and he was like, please don't touch me. I am so impure. But then Mahaprabhu embraced him. And he said, your humility is more beautiful than anything in this world. Right? That is the beauty. Humility wins over the heart of the other person. So it is not a sign of weakness. It is actually a sign of courage. And that is what we need to know. And we need to have the tendency between the relationship of mentor and mentee. Right? So, thank you so much. With that note, I will end the class here. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my realizations. Whatever I have repeated is basically a repetition of what I have heard from other devotees. If I have said anything offensive, please forgive me, and hope that I will be able to serve you again with all humility, and I also develop that humility so that way I can serve Guru and Gauranga with all my heart. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। वांछा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिंधुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। हरे कृष्णा।